Hello friends, welcome back to Technique. In this video, we'll do a detailed camera comparison. A lot of you have been asking us. It is the Xiaomi 15 versus the Oppo Find X8 camera comparison. Now these are two flagship level camera centric devices above the 50,000 price segment and below the 70,000 rupees in India. These two devices have really great cameras. We have the Xiaomi 15 with the Leica branding, while we have the Hasselblad tuning for the Oppo Find X8. Now these two devices have the triple camera setup and also a 32 megapixel selfie camera. Let's find out which of these two cameras is better and which is the better option to pick. So that's the video we're going to do. So before that, if this is your first time on this channel, do hit that subscribe button and also hit the bell icon to get notified of all the videos we publish. So let's begin with the hardware. Now talking about the Xiaomi 15. Now you get a triple 50 megapixel Leica Summilux lens. The primary 50 megapixel is f1.67 aperture. Optical image stabilization is included. The secondary camera is an ultra wide. Again, that's a 50 megapixel shooter. And the third is again a telephoto 50 megapixel. It's a floating telephoto lens, and you get a 32 megapixel selfie camera. Now coming to the Oppo Find X8, here again you get a 50 megapixel triple camera system. The primary is a 50 megapixel f1.8 aperture. Optical image stabilization is there. Then a telephoto lens, again a 50 megapixel. Ultra wide is also a 50 megapixel shooter and a 32 megapixel selfie camera. Now both those devices look very similar in terms of camera experience, but when it comes to portrait, you get the Xiaomi 15 in four different options: 23mm, then you get the 35mm, then 60mm and 75mm focal length, while this has 24mm, 49mm and 75mm focal length. So those are the differences. This is 1x, 2x and 3x, but here you get slightly better options, and also you get the master portrait lens system and also the Leica portrait, and you can play around with the bokeh effects, and other options are included, which is primarily not available on the Oppo Find X8. So in terms of portrait options, you do get additional features on the Xiaomi 15. So let's find out which of these cameras is better. Starting off with the daylight captures. So looking at the daylight captures, you can see here both the devices have good details and sharpness levels, but the colors look slightly natural or the realistic tones on the Xiaomi 15 when compared to the Oppo Find X8. Both produces really good sharpness levels, and the dynamic range also looks good. Here is another shot. You can see that both looks really good in terms of sharpness and details, but when you zoom into the picture, you can clearly see that Xiaomi 15 has more details, while Oppo Find X8 at zoom looks slightly blurry. Now overall, I would say both of these devices produces good images in daylight conditions. There is hardly anything to differentiate except for the details or sharpness levels when you zoom in. Otherwise both look very similar, but color quality was a tad better on Xiaomi 15, but not by a huge margin. So you can see here daylight captures, neither of these devices will disappoint users, and both produces really good images. The only differentiating aspect is the tones. Xiaomi 15 has a slightly warmer tone, while Oppo Find X8 has a slightly cooler tone. Now moving on to the zoom images, Xiaomi has 2.6x zoom, while Oppo Find X8 has 3x zoom. Both produces pretty good images. Once again, the colors are more realistic on the Xiaomi 15, but sharpness levels and other details looks very similar. Dynamic range also looks very similar on both the devices. Now moving on to the ultra wide angle camera, both the 50 megapixel shooters does a good job. There isn't much to differentiate here. Once again, colors are very similar. Again, details and sharpness levels and the dynamic range looks very similar on both the devices. So once again, in terms of ultra wide angle captures, there is not much of difference. Now when it comes to close-up images, here again you can see here Xiaomi 15 has a slightly sharper tone compared to the Oppo Find X8, but not by a huge margin. But when it comes to macros, Xiaomi 15 definitely has an edge with more details and more sharpness levels. Now when it comes to portrait, this is a very difficult choice. If you look at this image, you can see that the skin tones are more realistic on the Xiaomi 15, while Oppo Find X8 has a slightly warmer tone, but neither of these are perfect images. Both have their own slight issues. Now both of devices have edge detection issues at times. Now you can clearly see that if you want natural looking portrait, then Xiaomi 15 has extremely natural skin tones, but then if you want slightly richer tones, then Oppo Find X8 does a pretty good job. Now the bokeh effect also looks slightly better on the Xiaomi 15. But which of these portraits did you like? Do let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Now coming to the low light experience in indoor artificial light, both does a good job, but you can see here dynamic range and sharpness levels look slightly better on the Xiaomi 15, but not by a huge margin. Both produces really good images. The color reproduction and quality looks very similar. But when it comes to extreme low light, with the night mode turned on, this is where Xiaomi 15 has an advantage. You can see here more details and better dynamic range in the photos. This is something which Xiaomi has done better in terms of low light experience. Especially this picture, you can see here when I zoom, you can see that the mesh net which is on the house, you can see clearly on the Xiaomi 15, while on the Oppo Find X8 it is not visible. So in terms of low light conditions or extreme low light, the Xiaomi 15 has a slight advantage. Now moving on to the selfie camera, here you could see that while both did a pretty good job, I would say the selfie experience on the Oppo Find X8 was slightly better, especially the skin tones, which felt a bit more natural than the Xiaomi 15 in terms of processing, as well as the HDR performance looked quite similar on both the devices. The background portrait effect also looked very similar, but I would give it to Oppo Find X8 for the slightly better selfies overall. Finally, let's move on to the video recording. Now both the devices can do 4K 60 FPS, and here I would say Xiaomi did a slightly better job, especially the color tones, and also the stabilization was slightly better on the Xiaomi 15 when compared to the Oppo Find X8. Now both the devices did have very similar experience, but you could see that the color palette of the Xiaomi 15 looks much better in reality when compared to the slightly cooler tone on the Oppo Find X8. Now same is the case with the 1080p at 60 fps footage. Once again, I would say Xiaomi did a slightly better job overall in terms of video recording. So that's the video quality from Oppo Find X8 and the Xiaomi 15. So this is the 4K 60 fps footage taken using the front camera on the Xiaomi 15, and you can record videos in 4K as well as 1080p resolution. So you can judge yourself how good the clarity of the video is and also the audio output. So this is the front facing camera sample taken in 4K 60 fps using the Oppo Find X8. So you can record videos in 4K 60 fps as well as 1080p 60 fps. So you can judge yourself how good the clarity of the video is and also the audio quality. So that is the camera comparison of the Xiaomi 15 with the Oppo Find X8. Now which of these devices should you buy if you're looking for a flagship device? Now in terms of camera experience, whether you choose the Xiaomi 15 or the Oppo Find X8, you will be pretty much satisfied because both those devices are really good and really great camera centric devices. But if you are a person who cares for that extra features and extra depth and also the extra details and sharpness levels the Xiaomi 15 offers, then probably I think Xiaomi 15 makes sense. But if you are a person who shoots a lot of selfies, not selfie video, rather selfie photos, then probably the Oppo Find X8 makes a slightly better sense. But if you're a person who wants that extra details and sharpness levels, probably the Xiaomi 15 is slightly a better or versatile camera, especially in terms of portrait options being offered. But then again, the Oppo Find X8 is no far behind. But in terms of our comparison, we would say the Xiaomi 15 wins by a small margin when compared to the Oppo Find X8. So what do you guys think about the camera comparison of these two devices? Which of these cameras did you like? Do let us know your thoughts in the comment section. This is Animal signing off. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in our next video. Have a great day.